everyone. Welcome back to another episode with Beyond the Mind with Ani. Today we are diving into one of the most ancient and misunderstood stories ever told, one that still whispers through our culture, our relationships, and our sense of self. It's the story of Lilith and Eve. Two women who never met, yet together shaped thousands of years of how womanhood is defined, controlled, and remembered. According to the ancient Hebrew text, the alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith was not created from Adam's rib like Eve. She was formed from the same clay, equal. But when Adam demanded that she lie beneath him, she refused. She said, "We are equal, for we are both made from the earth." That refusal, that single act of saying no, became one of the most consequential moments in mythological history. For her obedience, Lilith was cast out of Eden, branded unholy, rewritten as demon, a seductress who preyed on infants and men in the night. And so, the first woman in history to claim equality became the first woman to be demonized for it. Then came Eve, sculpted from Adam's rib, not from the same earth, but from him. She was made to be a companion, not his counterpart. Her story, as told in Genesis, is the foundation of Western ideas about obedience, sin, and shame. Eve's crime was curiosity, her desire to knowledge, for wisdom, for the forbidden. And for that, she was punished, condemned to pain and guilt that will be passed down to all women after her. So here we have two women, both for wanting autonomy, one for refusing submission and the other one seeking understanding. And Lilith became the symbol of chaos, danger, and rebellion, and Eve became the symbol of purity, obedience, and blame. And together they created the oldest polarity in female psyche, a psychological split that still governs us today. Be obedient and loved, or rebellious and exiled. Be good or be dangerous. Be desired, but never too powerful. You can see this echo everywhere. In mythology, where the good goddess became the virgin and the bad goddess became the seductress. In religion, where obedience is divided and independence is seen. And even now, in the modern world, where a woman who asserts herself is labeled difficult, too masculine, or too much. It is not just an ancient story. It's the blueprint of control that shape how societies build their expectation of women. Because once a woman learned to fear her own power, the system didn't need to cage her. She would police herself. And that, my dears, is how obedience still rules our awakening. In ancient Jewish folklore, particularly in the alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith was not evil. She was independent, the first woman molded from the same dust as Adam. She saw herself as his equal. When Adam demanded that she lie beneath him, asserting dominance, Lilith said the words that would echo across millennia. We are equal, for we are made of the same earth. That single sentence challenged not just Adam's authority, but the entire notion of hierarchy itself. Lilith refused submission, and when she would not yield, she left the Garden of Eden, the paradise that demanded her obedience as its price. So according to the myth, God sent 3 angels to bring her back, but Lilith, true to her nature, refused again. Her punishment was not death, but demonization. She was recast as a dark spirit of the night, and a child killer, a seductress, a creature to be feared. Medieval texts and Christian theology would later transform her into a symbol of unrestrained female sexuality, the temptress who leads men astray and destroyer of order. And that is the deeper truth of how societies began to deal with women who said no. First, they're exiled, then they're rewritten. Finally, they're blamed for the chaos that follows. After Lilith's exile, Eve was created, not from the same soil, but from Adam's rib. His counterpart was not his equal. If Lilith represented rebellion, Eve represented compliance. She was the woman made for man. And yet, Eve's sin was not defiance, it was curiosity. She wanted knowledge, wisdom, awareness. She ate from that tree of knowledge, not out of malice, but from hunger, the same hunger that drives evolution, progress, and consciousness itself. But the story punished her curiosity, turning it into a curse, the birth of shame, pain, and blame that women were told they inherited. Eve's desire for understanding became humanity's original sin. So here we have two women, two archetypes, and two punishments. One punished for refusing to obey, the other punished for wanting to know. Lilith was branded evil for her independence, and Eve was burdened with guilt for her curiosity. Together, they reveal the oldest pattern of control, how feminine power in all its form became a threat. This myth sets the foundation for that reflection. Lilith, the dangerous other, punished for her autonomy. Eve, the obedient, praised for her submission. And millennia later, their shadow still live inside us. When women apologize for taking up space, when they soften their voice, when curiosity is mistaken for defiance, and when self-trust is labeled as arrogance. The myth of Lilith and Eve wasn't just a story about two women. It was the beginning of a story about all women. We often hear that women today are free to vote, free to work, to lead, to love who they choose. We're told you can have it all: career, family, independence, power. But beneath that polished promises lies something older, something quieter, a lingering echo of that myth that divided Lilith from Eve. Because even now, society still whispers, be accomplished but not intimidating, be confident but not loud, be beautiful but never vain, be independent but not too independent, or you'll be called cold. It is a script disguised as freedom. The stage has changed, but the story hasn't. Women are still rewarded for playing Eve, compliant, nurturing, and safe, while the Lilith within, bold, unapologetic, uncontrollable, is still seen as dangerous. Think of how media frames women who refuse the traditional models. A single woman over 35 years old is called unlucky or too picky. Sexually open woman is an attention seeker. A woman who chooses not to have children is called selfish. Meanwhile, a man who does the same is independent, focused, and free-spirited. We live in what feminist author Naomi Wolf calls the beauty myth, a system that sells women the illusion of power while keeping them occupied with the impossible ideals. Women can do anything, but only if they still look perfect doing it. We can chase success, but only within systems that were never designed for our rhythms, our bodies, or our ways of leading. Even feminism in some of these modern forms plays into this illusion. We are encouraged to lean in, but to lean in where? Into a structure that still values aggression over empathy, competition over collaboration, and logic over intuition? That's not liberation. That is assimilation. True empowerment isn't ticking boxes society hands us. It is asking who built those boxes in the first place. When a woman says, I don't want to get married or I don't want to have children, she's not rejecting femininity. She's reclaiming the right to define it for herself. When she builds a business from her intuition, writes from her truth, or chooses solitude over noise, she's embodying the same power Lilith was once claimed and was punished for. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Society tolerates empowered women only as long as they stay within the rules. A woman can be powerful but not too political. She can be sexual but not in control of her sexuality. She can be spiritual but not questioning the system that used spirituality to shame her. Every time a woman dares to live outside those limits, the old myth awaken. Not in scripture, but in gossip, in headlines, in judgment, because deep down, patriarchy never truly fears women's bodies. It fears women's autonomy. The ability to say, I decide, I define, and I choose. And that, my lovelies, is why obedience still hides inside empowerment. It looks like freedom, but feels like exhaustion. It sounds like success, but it smells like compromise. The real liberation begins when women stop trying to be enough for a world that profits from her self-doubt and starts remembering she already is. Patriarchy never says we control you. It says we protect you. Protection, the prettiest disguise of control. From the moment a girl is born, she's told that this world is dangerous, that she must be careful, gentle, smart about how she dresses, how she speaks, how she moves. The message isn't just to stay safe, it is to stay contained. The illusion of safety is ancient. In medieval and religious societies, women were told that their place under man's authority was divinely ordained, that obedience was protection from sin. But if you look closely, protection was never about safety. It was about ownership. Marriages for centuries wasn't about love. It was about exchange of property. A woman passed from her father's guardianship to her husband's. Even her legal identity was absorbed. She could not own property, sign documents, and even keep her wages. Her protection came at a cost of her autonomy. Even though laws have changed, the condition remains. Marriage is still framed as women's ultimate fulfillment. Motherhood is her highest calling. Success is often measured by how well she balances it all: career, family, beauty, softness. But when she steps outside that script, the world shifts its tone. A woman who doesn't marry is pitied. A woman who doesn't want to have children is called unnatural. A woman who prioritizes her calling over companionship is labeled as cold. It's not open misogyny. It is very subtle, yes. Polished, hidden behind the language of care. Even in modern feminism, we see the same dynamic, just dressed in empowerment slogans. We're told to lean in as if liberation means fitting into a system designed by men for men. We're told to have it all. But the moment we do, the question follows: at what cost? Sociologist Pierre Bourdieu called this symbolic violence, when domination becomes invisible because it's woven into our language, our tradition, and our common sense. That's why even the most progressive spaces can still feel quietly patriarchal. That workplace that praises diversity but silences emotional intelligence. The spiritual community that preaches feminine energy but expects women to remain humble and small. The modern man who says he wants a strong woman but withdraws when she shows her full strength. These are echoes of an ancient lie that women need protection from their own power. But what happens when women stop seeking permission to exist fully? When they stop mistaking control for care and start recognizing that real protection doesn't cage, it empowers. True love, true partnership, true spirituality, none of them require submission. They thrive in equality, in freedom, and in mutual respect. The hidden misogyny loses its power the moment it's seen for what it is, a fear not of women's weakness, but of their wholeness. Lilith wasn't just a woman, she was a force. She embodied a raw, untamed, feminine power, creation, sexuality, intuition, chaos, the wild current of life itself. When she was cast out of Eden and demonized, it wasn't only Lilith who was condemned, it was everything she represented. The world began to fear what it couldn't control. Women's anger was labeled hysteria. Their sensuality became temptation. Their intuition became irrationality. Their independence became danger. These labels weren't random, they were tools. Language became a weapon to separate women from their natural instinct. And those instincts, the capacity to feel, to sense, and know without logic, were replaced by obedience and self-doubt. Psychologist Carl Jung called this the suppression of the feminine archetype. It's what happens when cultures glorify reason over intuition, domination over connection, order over chaos. Lilith, the wild feminine, was exiled from collective consciousness, while Eve, the obedient feminine, was placed on the pedestal. Eve was sanctified, but not celebrated for wisdom or creation. She was praised for submission, for motherhood, for taking the blame. Blessed are the meek, she was told. And so the feminine became divided. Virgin over prostitutes, saint over sinners, mothers over seductress, Eve over Lilith. No space for the woman who is both, who can nurture life and also speak fire, who can be intuitive and intelligent at the same time, soft and fierce, sensual and spiritual. This split has shaped centuries of culture, art, religion, and philosophy, all reinforced it. In Christianity, Mary was the Virgin Mother, pure and silent, while Mary Magdalene, the woman closest to Jesus, was rewritten as repentant prostitute. In Greek mythology, Hera was the jealous wife and Aphrodite the dangerous lover. In Hinduism, Kali, goddess of death and creation, was both feared and worshipped, her power too vast for patriarchal comfort. Across cultures, the same message echoed. A woman's power must either serve or be silenced. Even today, we see the remnants. When a woman raises her voice, she's emotional. When she asserts boundaries, she's cold. When she embraces her sexuality, she's too much. When she softens, she's weak. Society still struggles to accept the whole woman, the one who refuses to choose between her Lilith and her Eve. But perhaps that's the awakening we're moving toward, the integration of what was divided. Lilith's wildness and Eve's wisdom are not the opposite. They're two expressions of the same divine feminine essence. Together, they form the complete woman, unashamed, embodied, and sovereign. And when that woman rises, the world begins to heal, because the suppression of feminine has never been just about women. It's about the suppression of balance, empathy, intuition, and life itself. When femininity is silenced, humanity loses half of itself. When she remembers herself, both shadows and light, creation remembers how to breathe again. This ancient split didn't vanish with myth. It evolved with better lighting. It still shapes our modern psyche, our language, our relationship, our workplace. Women feel guilty for saying no, for wanting more, for resting, for not having it all. The expectations has only changed customs. Now it's called balance. You can be ambitious but not intimidating. You can be sensual but not too much. You can be confident but not arrogant. You can be powerful but still pleasant. Meanwhile, men are still conditioned to fear the woman they can't control, the one who doesn't need saving, the one who mirrors back their unhealed parts. In a world built on dominance, equality feels threatening. So the same old story continues, only this time it is played out in boardrooms, dating apps, and social media comment sections. Assertive women are branded as difficult, or how female leaders are asked about their outfits and fashion instead of their policies. Words that once burned witches are still used to shrink women today. Even modern spirituality, which should be the space for liberation, often repeats the same pattern. The divine feminine is praised, but only gentle, healing, and graceful parts, not the Lilith energy, not the one that says no and sets boundaries, that burns illusion to the ground. We celebrate Eve's nurturing side, but still flinch at Lilith's rage. The split lives on. In work culture that rewards productivity over intuition, in dating culture that glorifies emotional unavailability, in social media trends that teach women to perform empowerment rather than live it. A woman who knows her power truly knows it, because she cannot be marketed, manipulated, or made to compete with herself. We still whisper Eve's punishment when a woman dares to want too much. We still whisper Lilith's exile when she refused to be owned. And yet, we're remembering. Women are writing new stories, reclaiming old myths, and speaking the name that were once forbidden. The same power that got Lilith cast out of Eden is now being reclaimed as sacred. The same curiosity that condemned Eve is now called awakening. We are not here to choose between them anymore. We're here to integrate them, to bring that rebel and the nurturer, the sensual and the wise, back into one body to say, I am both and I am whole. What if we rewrite the myth? What if Lilith was never a demon, but a mirror reflecting the freedom, the rage, and the raw truth we've been conditioned to fear? And what if Eve was never that source of humanity's fall, but the spark of its awakening, punished not for sin, but for her courage to seek? Every woman carries both within her. Lilith, the wild, untamed spirit that refuses to kneel and says no when the world expects compliance, and Eve, the seeker, curious and courageous, reaching for knowledge even when it cost her everything. One was exiled for disobedience and other was shamed for desire, but both were never meant to be divided. The real awakening isn't about choosing one over the other. It's about remembering both. It's about integrating the shadow and the light, the nurture and the rebel, the softness and the fire, because wholeness is not obedience. It is remembering who we were before the world told us who to be. So maybe the next evolution of womanhood isn't about becoming empowered. Maybe it's about becoming remembered, returning to the truth that was always ours. I want to thank you, my lovely listeners, for being here, for questioning, remembering, and rising with me. If this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to like, share, and leave a comment. Your voice helps this message reach more hearts, and together we amplify the remembrance. Because every time we reclaim a story once used to shame us, we reclaim a piece of our collective soul. And when we dare to see differently, we begin to write a new myth, one where the feminine is not feared but free. So until next time, stay awake, stay free, and always go beyond the mind.